to bits. And we got the draft now, finally. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. SK getting up the first pick, first ban of the day. And it will be their Zeratul ban into a Stitches with a first pick Illidan.
So the Zeratul ban is definitely something exclusive to the European teams. Interesting to see it as they put a lot more emphasis. Like I said, the European teams love themselves. Big disengagement, big displacement. And Zeratul, obviously, with Void Prison, fills exactly that role. And it can just be a nuisance in the late game. Once he hits level 13, 16, and gets rewind at 20, he can put out absurd amounts of bursts, especially if he gets that level 4 talent that where the Singularity Spike does its damage. Even if he doesn't land it, you can just kind of haphazardly throw 4 of those out with rewind and the double Singularity Spike, and the amount of damage it does, whether it lands or not, is just absolutely absurd, and it can put up crazy numbers and just burst people down. The first pick is going to be the Sergeant Hammer, and not one hero we really didn't see much of yesterday in the other tournaments, but that's okay because she's still a very strong hero. Her presence on this map has fallen off a little bit due to the mine changes, though she's still a very threatening hero. Push as well, just a strong backliner in general.
Yeah, and of course, we don't have to worry too much about a lot of bans for Sergeant Hammer. She seems to be a very strong pick. I haven't really seen too many bans overall, but perhaps I'm just not watching enough EU tournaments. But these are the polarizing picks. We see this a lot in Heroes. It's either going to be a Protect the Hammer or a dive comp with the Illidan's. If there is by chance a ban on either of those, then we just kind of get a mix of things into it. And without any support bans, it's going to be the Rhaegar first to go there with the Sergeant Hammer. They absolutely do not want to be giving SK the Rhaegar combo with an Illidan.
Yeah, the holy trinity of Illidan, Tassadar, and Rhaegar. They pair up with each other so very well. But I am expecting SK to pick themselves up a Tassadar, and then what they can pick up after that, they have definitely a lot of options. They can pick up themselves another great damage dealer if they so choose. They can have Tyrande on the map. They want to get themselves a warrior that synergizes well with Illidan. Obviously, ETC comes to mind, Diablo as well. There's a lot of synergy going on between the two. And it's going to be the Vala, big damage dealer. And if they don't pick a Tassadar here, that would be surprising. But it's SK, man. They kind of go to the flow of their own rhythm. And we're going to see what they end up picking here. Vala, obviously, a great backliner, and definitely don't want to let the enemy team get their hands on that, because a Vala and a Sergeant Hammer in the backlines, that is a lot of just big AoE damage, and there's not much you can do about it without hard initiation.
Yeah, you would need some really hard initiation to either split them up or dive into the back line and have that survivability ready to go. Having a Vala on the back of an Illidan is a really great way to go, except that SK is kind of leaving themselves to be vulnerable here to getting counterpicked with their supports. So, and, picking up a Tyrande there on the back of that as well. I mean, we just talked about this, the Hunter's Mark, the Owls, the Stun. It combos so well for an Illidan since he's just going to be always just parkouring around, diving, ducking. I mean, if you can dodge an arrow, you can probably dodge a wrench, right? But
exactly.
Yeah, there's no real support here for SK, and they didn't pick up a Tassadar, they didn't pick up an Uther.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I'm curious to see if they can't go both now because they need a tank still, unless they're really going to go highly dependent upon the meta. So, I mean, Kick Inc. has a good opportunity here to at least deny one of those big powerhouse supports for that comp.
Picking themselves up an ETC. The Rock God is going to be on the side of them. And also going to be another denial pick because the synergy between ETC and Illidan is very well known and very, very strong. And looking at the positions that they need to fill now, they have a frontline warrior, they have a backline healing support, they have a good backline damage. Zeratul is absolutely an option here. I'm sorry, not Zeratul, Zagara, the other Z hero. Zagara is a option that could be picked up. Just a hero that's really making a resurgence, not only in Europe, but also North America as well. Just great lane sustain, great lane push. Early game is phenomenal, and she scales well into the late game too. Also, could just pick up, I mean, if they want to go with a double warrior composition, that's a possibility as well. There is the Diablo that could be picked up. Diablo's another hero that's been all over the place. Kind of just came out of nowhere, and now we're seeing a lot of Diablo. And double warrior is definitely on the rise over here in Europe. Played a lot more in Europe than I believe in any other scene that I'm familiar with. So that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, the Tyrande will, however, just kind of lend a little bit more oomph when it comes to taking out that double tank line. And if you don't have a lot of crowd control in general, you're not really going to be able to cover, your bases there with the Illidan. So if I have to protect the hammer with any warrior, my first thought right now in the current meta is an ETC. I think he just does a fantastic job protecting that back line. And now we got an Tassadar on the back of that here for Kick Inc. So they do deny the shielding synergy there for SK. And at the same time, shields, Archon, healing ward. We got double healing ward because of the healing totem now there as well for Kick Inc. So they do set themselves up very nicely in terms of protect the hammer comms because they're going to be able to keep that ETC up. ETC has a really hard time actually getting bursted down anyways. And, you know, that kind of last pick, I'm curious to see if it would be more of a bruiser or another backline because we have seen a lot of picks where people take Illidan and the counter to that would be a Tychus.
Very much so, because Tychus overkill just chews apart through evasion. And obviously that's kind of the big linchpin of Illidan's skill set is avoiding damage, not necessarily tanking damage, but avoiding damage. And if you have a lot of ways to deal with it, then that can really make his life a living hell. There's the Uther pickup for SK, and I was just about to say it, there is the Chen pickup. So SK is going to use this Chen, use the barrel to divide the enemy team, push him around, get him away from the target they're trying to separate, though. Looking at their draft, though, the Tyrana pretty much has, with the exception of a Hammer of Justice, she doesn't have like a good initiating lineup for her Lunar Flare. A blind Lunar Flare on its own can be pretty difficult to land, especially looking at the lineup that they're facing. ETC has Power Slide, Tassadar's Dimensional Shift. Rhaegar, it can be slippery with the Ghosts. I think the only big stationary target that she's going to be able to consistently land Lunar Flares on is going to be Sergeant Hammer, and sometimes even then that can be a little hard to do in hectic team fights. But nonetheless, SK finalizing their draft with that good frontline warrior. His early game is definitely insubstantial, to put it lightly, but once he hits those big talents, gets barrels, that's really when SK is going to hit their stride and be looking for team fights on the map.
So if he can jump into even just the middle of them and get that hammer going, or get that barrel going, we can separate out the hammer, you can separate out the ETC, get those supports just kind of far flung. So what will Kick actually do for the end game here? Now, it did surmise a little bit of Tychus because of the Illidan, but now that there is going to be a barrel now on the floor, wow, they're actually going to go a little bit more towards not what I was thinking with the Nazebo, but having the backline with the Nazebo, he's going to be able to solo out a lane earlier on. He can get those stacks ready to go for his death ritual, for his voodoo ritual there. And I'm not sure. I mean, you're going to have to really play around the Chen barrel at this point if you really want to keep that Ravenous up. Could we see the rise of the Gargantuan? But I don't know. I mean, right now, I was definitely looking for somebody a bit more mobile, somebody not channeling dependent because of those 3 sets of stuns that we got going here for SK. 4 if you go for the Reign of Vengeance. But that will be the draft, guys. So Dragonshire is coming forward. This is widely regarded as Sergeant Hammer's strongest map.
Very much so.
We'll have to see how Kick can do up against Team SK.
Yeah, looking at Kick's lineup, I'm looking at the Witch Doctor, looking at the ETC, and Tyrande is a great hero to counter out the big ultimates. The more common ultimates we see is obviously the Ravenous Spirit on Witch Doctor. We have seen Gargantuan in the past with the European scene with varying levels of success, but the Ravenous Spirit is definitely the more common one. And ETC with Mosh Pit. And sometimes what you see is you look at SK and go, well, they have a Tyron, you know, which is obviously an easy range stun to interrupt the Ravenous Spirit or the Mosh Pit. However, she can't consistently land it on 2 heroes. The Uther is a melee hero, so for him to interrupt it, he's going to have to walk into the front lines and interrupt it. Any Witch Doctor who is up to snuff is going to put himself in a position where Uther can't casually walk up to him and Divine Storm or Hammer adjusts him out of it. So Tyrana is going to have a decision to make if ETC chooses to go Mosh Pit. We'll see when that happens. He could go stage up, could go Mosh Pit, can go either way, especially on Dragonshire. That it's going to go a Ravenous Spirit or a Mosh Pit. I can only take one out of the match. Can't reliably take both of them out of the match. And both of them are such strong game-changing heroics that as long as one of them lands on maybe 1 or 2 heroes for full duration, it can swing that team fight their way. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a choice they go with, where, you know, force Tyrone to make decisions. And if she makes the wrong decision, it's just going to spell disaster for that team fight.
Well, this is more or less a game of decisions. And with the Dragonshire, I mean, are you going to be looking for that early Dragonshire, the early Merc? So you're going to play Ring Around the Rosie, where you only take out the one. Are we going to see early roam comps with the Tyrande, with the Illidan, with the Vala? Or are we just going to see more of a party lane to try to counter out the siege push available here to Kick Inc? There's a lot of ways that we can go, and that's part of the fun here of Heroes of the Storm. That's why we have this big tournament here, courtesy of Alienware, Rocat, and Gosugamers. So there's the countdown, Shane.
right.
Super excited to get into our
Yes.
first match of the day. Will be SK Gaming and Team Kick Inc. So we're going to be loading in here for the best of one.
So, looking at these team compositions, what I expect to see for the lanes on the side of Kick is they're going to put Tassadar in the mid lane with ETC in the top lane, and then the bottom lane, they have a beastly tri-lane if they decide to go that in the bottom with a Witch Doctor, a Rhaegar, and a Sergeant Hammer. That is a phenomenal lane. It pushes well. There's a lot of harassment, range. They have good wave clear. A lot of potential for them to get themselves some early game towers. Their Tassadar in the mid is basically a free lane where to soak up experience. If he pushes the wave in enough, he can rotate down to bottom and even help out even more with the strong push they already have. And obviously, ETC is one of the best solo laners. Not much to say about that. But ladies and gentlemen, we are finally into our first match of the day. And on the left side of your map, you guys know him as SK Gaming. It's going to be Ragi playing the Chen. It's going to be the Snitch on Illidan Bakery, on the Vala Zarmony on Tyrande, and Rave playing the Uther.
Now on the flip side, Team Kick Inc., they did just come off a victory in the round of 64. They got to be feeling good about that, but up against this powerhouse, we have to see how they can go. Potty Boss, Alex the Prog, or maybe the Pro G. The OG, the Pro G, I get it. Tony, Tazdingo, and Rolik are going to be making up the team here. And it looks like they are setting up for a bottom lane party lane, whereas we got all 5 of SK already here into the mid. Now, we have seen a lot of 4-0 swaps. So if Araragi does actually go off into the top lane just to deal with that, we could see the ping pong effect with the 4-man stack as they just go back and forth between bottom and mid. But so far, they have all elected to stay into the mid themselves. There we go. Araragi will now hit himself up top.
Mid or feed, that's the name of the game for them. That's exactly what they did. Looking at the potential roam, Hammer Justice into Lunar Flare. There it is, Hunter's Mark on top of it. Witch Doctor's in a bad position. He's going to get caught out. And First Blood going the way of SK Gaming. A good rotation. They got off the skills very well timed, and it's going to get them the First Blood going to SK.
Yeah, and as I said, we've seen that time and time again. Yep. That early roam, if you're not accustomed to it and you're not counting against it, that early push coming out, especially with 2 siege into the bottom lane, I mean, they are going to just shred that creep wave, and they're going to push up, and that will leave them susceptible to ganks. So it looks like after that first, we are good for the 3-party lane here. But you know, Vala has a very big tendency of keeping some of these more siege comps at bay. And the early game Sergeant Hammer damage is something that a lot of teams really look for.
Yeah, the multi-shot build is so good at wave clear and just kind of fording off any big pushes. Looking at the level 1 talents, though, the one I want to mention the most is the Pierce coming out from the Tyrande. Generally, we see the either improved Hunter's Mark. Oh, down here in the bottom lane. Oh, no, the Hunter Flare is unfortunately off the mark. And they're not going to get a kill, but seeing the Pierce, so maybe we're going to see a little bit of an Owl build coming out from the Tyrande, specifically at Ranger at level 16. The snipes from that Owl can do such a huge amount of damage if you can line them up. And knowing that the enemy is going to have to position themselves on top of the shrines, you can see that when they're taking it, it can really help Tyrande build up big numbers and do a lot of harassment damage from the other side of the map.
I was curious to see if she was actually going to go for the Healing Ward or the Protective Shield, just try to keep that Illidan up, but it will be the Healing Ward. You just could not deny the power of an AoE 30% heal that it's sometimes nigh untargetable. And then they did actually pick up, Uther as well. So the Uther does have the shield, will be the Healing Ward there. The double Healing Ward is ready to go on Kick, but apparently Nazeebo caught even behind enemy line, or behind his own gate. Wow.
Yeah, there was that Tyrande Lunar Flare into Hunter Mark, followed up with the Vala, and he is getting taken out. So SK Gaming is thwarting off this very, very strong lane to Sergeant Hammer, Witch Doctor, and Rhaegar with just big bursts, taking off these guys, because both of those are immobile heroes. If you don't deal with them, they're going to push in your lane. There's not much you can do about it, but as long as you can lock them down and put them where you want to put them, they're just going to get torn apart. So that's exactly what's happening with them.
Araragi getting torn apart into that top. Potty Boss perhaps didn't get that initial aggro that he wanted on top of that shrine, but he has now taken it back in full force. Zombie Wall and Tazdingo looking for that trap on top of Zarmony, but they could not get it. Healing Ward does go down, gets targeted, and there's another stun. A great pushback, though, with the concussive, but it will not be enough. Sergeant Hammer is going to get outplayed. The mobile game versus the immobility, and she has lost that role. 3-0 for kills. SK now level 7 on top of it. They got themselves a pretty good early game lead here.
And looking great, that aggressive vault from Bakery was able to secure the kill on the Sergeant Hammer. The tower's pretty healthy in the bottom lane. Mid lane, looks like both of these towers have taken a little bit of damage, nothing too much. And up there in the top lane again, these two warriors duking it out. And ETC is a great solo laner, but Shen is so hard to deal with because he can just soak up the damage. And there it is, the first Dragonite of the match, right at about the 4-minute mark. So maybe get some tier 1 towers, get a gate or 2 down. Don't expect too much damage to come out of this.
Yeah, the Tassadar was trying his best up against this Illidan, but Tassadar against Illidan is just a game of shields up against heals. And the heals, unless you get some really heavy team support, is always going to win over those shields. So we don't see the collapse. Everybody is still in lane. They're trying to maximize that experience, try to get that soak so that we can hit that heroic status at level 10. And Snitch, that just means that he is able to get both of these tier 1 towers in the first engage. And will he go top? Will he go bottom? Will he continue to push on?
Yeah, he got the tier 1 towers. It looks like he's not really rotating. He's just staying down here in mid. Going to take down the gate. And with level 10 on the horizon, there's a bottom lane push that SK has going for him. It's not often you see a push into a tower with a Sergeant Hammer. Tony barely dodging that Lunar Flare. If that Lunar Flare hit, that would have been the end of him. He was able to dodge it with that Ghost Swift, though. Level 10, just about to be here. This is going to be a great window of opportunity for SK to get something done on the map.
Yeah, the bottom towers were absolutely decimated. The mid there gone as well. A full level advantage going the way of SK, and that will put Heroics now on the board. The barrel comes out, Starfall, Metamorphosis. It's not going to be a strafe. I was curious to see if we had enough control with them, but it will be the rain. So 4 sets of CCs ready to go. That's going to play havoc with sieged up hammers, with ravenous spirits, with mosh pits if we do go that route. So we have a really good set of skills available here to SK Gaming.
It's very adaptable to the situation. Barrels can be used as a disengagement. It can be used as disruptive. It can be used to knock people into the enemy lines. It's a very adaptive tool, and as well as just the other lineup. Rain of Vengeance, again, has a lot of applications. You want to see it offensively, but it can be used as a defensive maneuver as well to secure a getaway. So it's definitely just overall a very strong draft, very strong heroic pickup. From SK Gaming, they're able to get those Horseshoe Bruisers, and they're going to continue this push in a bottom lane and try to get the first fork of the matchup.
ETC has yet to actually take a heroic, and they might be evaluating if he can even get any kind of mosh off, but they're going to go for it. They are going to go for that AoE stun. If you can get a few of those stunners in, perhaps you're going to get good on the cooldowns, but that's a very risky pickup here from Potty Boss. I mean, the stage dive with the global presence could have meant that Arvaragi is going to be pushing into the top, and he shows up to a bottom fight a little bit late, but it's not going to be the case. So, level 12 to 10, we're looking at almost the level 13 talents here for SK Gaming. They do have some of those mercs. In fact, a lot of the map actually being painted blue already. Potty Boss going to get caught out on a rotation, but here comes his team.
Fine, I was going to say that they need to rotate. They need to do it sooner rather than later. Divine Storm completely whiffed. Agari is just knocking around Kick. Dimensional Shift already having to be used, so this is looking great for SK Gaming, forcing Kick on the defensive from the get-go. Unfortunately, ETC just simply caught out of position, and that put them on the back foot and was able to SK Gaming to take an easy 2-0. Level 13 is here. Looks like their eyes are going to be on this fort in the mid lane.
Yeah, and the fort is definitely going to be a big prize because they can put up this pressure mid, which means that they can guarantee Illidan grabbing this dragon. Araragi's already up top. There's the double shrines, and this will be the second dragon of the game for SK. Catching a Potty Boss like that was definitely a big detriment there to King. That rotation did not work in their favor whatsoever, and we didn't have that front line. And without that single warrior front line, I mean, you saw Araragi, he just had free reign with that barrel. He got in, he kept the hammer too far forward, and then the collapse was really just too much on him. Something I just noticed here, though, Shane, as perhaps a little bit of a fight bottom, we have double clairvoyances on Kick.
Yeah, and I was going to say there's not a Stitches on the map, so they're not too worried about the Stitches hook coming out. But with 2 clairvoyances, just going to grant them a lot of vision on the map. That's something interesting. You're right. It's normal. It's not normal to see 2 clairvoyances. I've seen it before, but usually when you see this sort of vision, emphasis on the vision talents is usually when there's Stitches on the map, but that is not the case. Maybe it has to do with the fact they worry about the Tyrande. They don't want to get stunned out of position, or they just want to get that positional awareness so that they can get a foot up in these team fights.
That's interesting. Yeah, the far side, the clairvoyance, the oracle. I mean, we have so much information to control, but still no kills on the board here for Kick. So that's going to weaken our level 7 talent choice, I feel, here for Nazeebo because of that. But I mean, right now, Man, that Dragon Knight definitely did its work. I mean, we saw it basically take down this entire mid gate by itself. Araragi has just been tanking and tanking and tanking. He has enough to share there with his broods. He's been shielding up himself as well as his team, and now we got no more front line here for Kick. They're sitting here in the back, and they're looking for the plays, and they're thinking maybe we can get the Panda, but he just skips right on out of it, and here comes the counter.
A good ancestral healing is good counter initiation. Can they get the second life onto Taz? No, Taz is going to get healed up. Agara using that barrel, but he's got to be careful. He's real low. The ETC is down, so no frontliner here for Kick. There's a lunar flare, not much follow-up though. Archon is used with not much damage being done, so this is looking good for SK Gaming. They forced a lot of heroics out of Kick. Not much was done with them, and they are more than likely going to be able to clean up this mid heap, get themselves level 16, and continue to put themselves in a great position here, Sean.
16 to 13 with the 3 levels now achieved. We do got the sprint there on the Nazebo as well. Giant Killer, I mean, it's a very standard Sergeant Hammer build coming out. The Shrink Ray for that Illidan coming up from the Tastar as well.
Yes.
Heal Dog with the Healing Surge, and Relentless. The Relentless on ETC, he has taken the Mosh Pit, and I've yet to see it actually cast in 3 levels.
Yeah, or Ravenous Spirit. I feel like there was definitely a time for it to be used there, but they're both up here, and they know that a lot of heroics are on cooldown for SK, so this might be a good opportunity for them to get something going in their way. I felt like they're just simply playing too defensive. I feel like Kick is stuck in a rut right now. They haven't made any, I mean, they hit level 10. They were still really static in lanes. They allowed SK to push. They didn't make any rotations whatsoever, even with level 10. So I feel like Kick really has to get a little bit more aggressive with their rotations, get themselves out on the map, or they're just going to allow SK to walk all over the map, paint it blue, and just win this war of attrition and slowly knock their structures down.
All that vision. I mean, they knew SK Gaming was there. Potty Boss is way up in front. Snitch is going for Tony. You know, got to get that Ancestral out. Araragi jumps forward, though. Here's the barrel. Splits the team in half yet again. Tony's left to his own devices. Rolik will get himself a little bit of a Ravenous before the stun comes right to him. Araragi did jump to him as well, and it looks like he will be the only casualty here from SK, but here comes the Metamorphosis. That closes the gap. There goes the Nazebo. Tazdingo is definitely on the menu, but Bakery does not have enough gas there. And the tank, I don't think, actually did grab that kill. Alex the Pro G back in the back, but he's not going to be very dangerous back there, and that will put us at a 3-for-1 trade.
So we finally saw our first Mosh Pit and Ravenous Spirit of the game. It was actually a pretty good lineup. They were in queue with each other. The Ravenous Spirit went off right as the Mosh Pit landed. However, the follow-up from SK Gaming was on point. The Ravenous Spirit was interrupted very quickly. The Mosh Pit interrupted with a good Rain of Vengeance and also securing the kill on the ETC. And being down 3 levels, soon to be 2 levels at this point of the match, can be so detrimental as we now are hitting that 12, soon to be 15-minute mark. And that's when the Dragon Knight can just start knocking your buildings down. He has a huge amount of HP, and there's not much you can do about it. With the amount of HP he has, and the amount of damage he does, he can just walk all over the map, do what he wants to do. And it looks like SK might be getting a little confident here. They're going, screw the keeps, we're going to go right for the game.
Well, I mean, the path of least resistance. If you have a path out to the core, why wouldn't you take it, Mr. Shane? But you know, Zarmany, he did delay out. We were waiting for that spawn timer on Araragi, and now we're waiting for that Illidan to come in. But Potty Boss is a little bit forward. Araragi already jumping on top of him. There goes the zombie wall. Nothing really happening there, and Zarmany has started to work away on the shield on this core. Araragi going to be up there. Rave looking for that stun. Here it goes. The big combo there on top of Alex the Koji. Nobody is hitting that Ravenous. There we go. The barrel finally does find its way to him, but it's not going to be touching really too much else. Doesn't really look like it accomplished what it needed to. Daz Dingo from the back gets off of those auto attacks on top of the Dragon, but by the end of it, Shane, it will not matter. Nobody going down means it will be a 0% core, and that will be game. SK Gaming moves on here for Enter the Cup #1.
SK Gaming, they drafted well, they played well, and that was pretty much their game to take from the get-go. Like I said, I felt like Kick was a little bit of a stuck in a rut. They were definitely down in the early game. They had a great tri-lane in the bottom lane, but smart sense out of SK to recognize that